Good afternoon, good day, ladies and lizards. Welcome back to another episode of the Free Lizard Society. And I'm your host, William Chappell, Will Chappell, the man with many names. People growing up always ask me, is it Chappelle or Chappell? And I got tired of correcting people, so I eventually just started saying, whatever you think, man. People do not know how to handle that information. Like, what do you mean, what do I think? It's your name, dude. I'm like, I guess so. You're saying it. So I'm not usually saying my own name unless I'm meeting you for the first time. Regardless, welcome. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and lizards, and bird folk, and lizard kin, and, dragons, and, whatever you are, whatever you identify as, welcome here. Fantastic. Everyone's welcome? Great. I've been stewing on how difficult life can be. People say life's hard, adulting is hard, which I hate the term adulting, but that's for another episode altogether. But people are feeling the weight of the world, there's a lot going on around us. People say life is hard. Is life hard? I'm not actually sure life is hard. Breathing, eating, sleeping, reproducing, these are all pretty easy. Maybe the reproducing is hard for some of you guys. It's just hard to, maybe you have some expectation of reproducing, but you could go find someone to reproduce with, If you don't know what reproducing is, ask your lizard friends. But these things are relatively easy. They're not that difficult. I mean, everyone loves to eat. I mean, look around you. I mean, look to your left, look to your right in America. People love, they're good at eating, professionally good at eating. Sleeping's only hard unless you have fun things to do, but taking a nice nap or being depressed is making sleeping really easy, unless you have a life to live, in which case, awesome. But I think it's everything else that makes life hard. It's the managing friendships, people canceling and rescheduling on you. That's gotten more difficult since COVID for sure. But marriage is hard. It's a tricky thing, like having a body part you can't control, which is awesome, but also difficult. The grind, going to work, being a wage slave, working for the man, that's hard. Ingesting unending content, the world news, entertainment, managing subscriptions, paying taxes, wrestling with meaning, striving for success. This is the stuff that gets in the way, that makes life hard, if you will. But, me personally, I've been trying to regulate my media diet, my consumption of news. I'm one of those kind of guys. I don't know what it is about me. I'm sure people like this. I just listen to news all the time. I listen to people online on YouTube, political streamers, debating other people online, terminally online people, debating people about, the ins and outs of the current conflicts and how we got here, why we got here, who sucks, who doesn't suck, why Donald Trump's bad, why Donald Trump's good, why the war in Ukraine is, this isn't a political podcast. It's mostly funny. Mostly just me talking out my butthole, but my lizard hole. But I'm trying to change what I intake because no one wants to talk about politics like at social events. It's a huge turnoff for everyone. They immediately get stressed out about it, and I think weak-minded people. But I respect that they don't want to talk about it, and I'm trying to be different because I don't want to be the guy arguing with people into the late hours of the night while everyone else is having fun, and me and like another guy. I mean, it's fun for me, but not fun for everybody else. Or me and another guy that I found like me. I did this the other day at a friend's girlfriend's birthday party. Me and the boyfriend of the girlfriend, right? The friend. We were arguing about one of the current conflicts all night, and me and him were having a blast. I think because we kept texting about it the day afterwards. We still talk about it, but everyone else at the party was like, why the hell are these guys talking about that? That sucks. And we just didn't stop until way later. And they're like, hey, you guys have to stop, dude. This is ruining the party. And we weren't ruining the party, really. They were all doing their thing. We were doing our thing. They were just letting it affect them. But I digress. I don't want to be that way. What am I doing? I can't solve any of these problems. It doesn't, no one likes to talk about it. Like we just discussed. I can't solve any of these problems. I can't do anything. What am I doing? So recently, I've been searching to change my algorithm, to change my content, change my diet. And so I've been blessed with the opportunity to join a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. That's right, I've done it. I feel like my whole life, I have always said about comedy that my whole life I should have been doing comedy, a scratch that I've always meant to itch. But I think really what I was supposed to do on this earth was play Dungeons and Dragons. Nothing is more fun than going into an imaginary world, creating your own character, creating your own story, problem solving with some of your friends in silly voices, rolling dice, playing the game of chance to find out if you can defeat the goblins or the bandits that have toppled the supplies coming into the tavern that's out of beer. I'm solving real problems. I mean, not real problems, but I'm solving problems. And I can't tell you how rewarding it's been. I'm a Eric Cochran cleric. For those of you who don't know, I know some of you know. I know my audience. They know some Dungeons and Dragons. The Eric Cochran is it's not a very common playable character, but is a playable character in Dungeons and Dragons. Where effectively I'm a bird person. Got big wings. I got a beak. I look like a hawk, like an eagle hawk thing. And I get to make my own character and design him, and then now I'm living in this world. And you know what I haven't been thinking about? Ukraine, Russia. You know what I haven't been worried about? Palestine and Israel. And those are serious, important things to think about that you should, have an opinion, care about. Totally. I love talking about those things, but I feel like it's been negatively impacting my life talking about those things and thinking about those things all the time. That now I get to go into a new world. I had to leave Earth to change my outlook on life, And I think, it's awesome. And if you don't play D&D and you think, oh, that's lame, that's for dorks, I think you're lying to yourself that you think you're so cool that you can't play pretend games. You like to play like Uno, or you like to play other board games. I hate board games in general, as me personally, I hate board games. I typically do not like board. I'm a very specific board game kind of guy. I'll play like Settlers of Catan. I might get talked into playing Risk if I want to lose friends that night. But generally speaking, I don't play board games or card games. Whenever someone says you want to play a board game in a party, I try the nicest way possible to not play that. I don't want to be the stick in the mud, the jerk that's not playing the board game with everybody. But so I'll do it, to be a people pleaser, which I can be sometimes. I wouldn't call myself a people pleaser like some people. I think people that say they're people pleasers really don't do all that much pleasing of people. They're usually kind of annoying. They just want themselves to be people pleasers. But I digress again. But Dungeons and Dragons, this is a whole new thing. It's a whole new world. There's a dungeon master. My good buddy's Warren Greed. I'm playing with my buddy Elliot Weisberg. My wife. I got my wife into Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, boys, you're complaining about getting your ladies to watch football with you or let you go golf or whatever. But play Dungeons and Dragons with your wife. And then, of course, Erica, Warren's girlfriend. I'll be bleeping all their names out. No, I'm just kidding. I won't do that. I don't care enough. And hopefully they don't either. They probably don't care if 12 to 27 people listen to me talk about them playing Dungeons and Dragons. But there we are. We're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going into this imaginary world. And you know what? I'm not thinking about the hardships, the fact that Netanyahu went on the Nelk Boys. I don't have to worry about that. And I shouldn't have to worry about the Nelk Boys. I don't even know who the Nelk Boys really are, other than they're boys and they're Nelk. It's kind of like milk. It's like the N milk, which raises a lot of questions of what the Nelk Boys even means. I'm sure I could do some basic research into what that means and find out, but I don't want to waste my time with that. That's not important. What I really want to find out is where this bandit leader ran off to that we were in a battle with, and he's the only one that escaped. I got to find out what's going on, why these supply runs have been thwarted. Why is this merchant, this local tavern guy, local barkeep of the Dick Skins Inn, that's the name of it. I didn't make it up, Warren did. But he's having trouble getting supplies to his village. And so me, the Birdman, cleric, sort of a religious person in this world, serving at a holy mission that I'm on. More on that if you ever come to my D&D campaign, which I don't want to bore you with too much lore. And then Elliot, who's a tiefling bard, which is basically like a demon person / bard, like magical singer person. So he can like cast a spell of vicious mockery, for instance, to make someone less capable of doing what they do. Super sick. My wife is a wizard, little elf wizard, hot, first of all, and she's got cool spells, more of a ranged person. And then, of course, Erica is the human druid. She can become a bear or, talk to animals and such. So I don't think about the problems of the world anymore. I'm just playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm listening to on YouTube and like my podcast. I'm not listening to like podcasts I've slowly started to hate over the years. I'm not going to name any names, but podcasts that have become sort of redundant, empty, hollow, not interesting. So sort of just a lot of podcasts have become like salads at a fast food restaurant. It's like information, and like they bring guests on that are quote unquote experts in their field, even though they end up just saying the same things that everyone else is saying all over the internet. Whichever side you're on, this exists for both. But instead of doing that, instead of participating in slop like the salad at a McDonald's, it's like healthy. It's really healthy, but it's salad at McDonald's. It's not health food. Now I'm playing an imaginary world where I get to become a different thing and solve, I don't want to say real problems, because a lot of our problems, we say they're real problems, but like figuring out how many subscriptions you have, that's your problem. Like you created that problem. Like you don't need to have all the subscriptions. If that's a problem that you have, that's not a real problem. Back in the old days when we had to like travel to get places like months on end, if you wanted to see your aunt in Dallas and you lived in Amarillo, Texas, where I'm from, you had to travel for weeks, God forbid months. It didn't just happen overnight. Until we invented highways and cars, people had to like risk their lives to go see their relatives in other cities. So they didn't do it. They just didn't do that unless they wanted to completely uproot their lives for like the next 10 to 20 years, if not forever. Like now, if you want to go to California, like if I wanted to take my family to California, like San Diego, and go see the beaches or go see my cousin in LA, what I got to do is I got to book a plane ticket really far out in advance and save my money so I can manage my funds and cash flow in order to go on this trip. But if I was a pilgrim living in Amarillo, Texas or San Antonio, Texas, and I wanted to travel to California, I was going to be on the pilgrim. I might not even make it to California. My children's children might make it, So yeah, you might go into some debt, some credit card debt to go to the Bahamas, but it's better than dying. So is life hard? Yeah, I guess life's hard. Mostly it's just like you coping with whether or not you're comparing to your peers at your time. How successful am I compared to everyone else around me? Or how successful am I compared to the image I wanted to be, where I wanted to be as opposed to where I'm at? Totally. Yeah, you should be sad. I mean, if you want to be sad, go ahead and be it. Because, I'm not going to stop you from being sad about where you are or what you're thinking about. But what would help is if you play Dungeons and Dragons and you became a lizard person that was resistant to poison and can breathe underwater. And, maybe you shot bows and arrows and collected jewels and gold coins and defeated a dragon. It wouldn't solve all your problems, but neither is watching that new Netflix show. Neither is drinking with your friends every weekend. Yeah, sure, it's fun. You're hungover in the morning. You regret some of the things you said. Yeah, for sure. That sounds fun too. Or you could just not do any of that and play Dungeons. I'm probably going to quit my life. I'm probably going to stop doing everything. This is probably the last podcast I ever do. I'm probably going to devote my life to Dungeons and Dragons. I'm going to live in a lair. I'm going to study the ancient texts in the world and drop out of society. Now, if I didn't have a wife and kid, I'm not so sure that wouldn't happen. If I had found Dungeons and Dragons before I had a wife and kid, I wouldn't have a wife and kid now. My son is not a level 12 paladin. What spells does he have? Can he help me in a pickle if I get attacked by a bunch of hobgoblins? The answer is no. Maybe some of you think your son could help you in those situations, in which case your kid's better than mine. But no, my kid has no armor class. He's got no... I'm not even sure if he even uses any magic at all. So it's like, is he even really a good kid? I'm not sure. Still, time will tell. But hopefully he'll become a mature, responsible Eric Cochran or maybe like a half elf, half human rogue, sort of like a sneak character that with blades of mystery. I don't know. I just think like what are you spending your day doing? Honestly, think about the last 30 days of your life and how do they look? I bet they look pretty similar. I bet they look pretty boring, pretty similar. Maybe you went on a fun trip because it's July. You spent your summer going to the beach more often, going to the pool more often, which, beaches and this leisure is fun, but, are you really living your life to the fullest potential unless you're playing Dungeons and Dragons? My argument today is no. No, you're not. You should start a podcast and you should play Dungeons and Dragons and go to a comedy open mic. These are all really good ideas. You should do all of these things because this is why you're not happy. Because you're too busy worried about problems you can't solve. You're too busy thinking about how you suck compared to like your buddy on Instagram who's selling insurance or selling cars, which is what a lot of people end up doing. And I just decided that wasn't going to be me. No, I'm going to be a cleric and I'm going to worship the god of Akkadi. My character had a vision which brought him out of his very secluded air village up in the mountains, leaving his bird home to involve himself with the problems of the world. It's sort of like an angel, he's a big winged eagle, coming from on high down to the people to help solve the evils of the world. I mean, I think I'm making a pretty compelling case for Dungeons and Dragons over the news right now. And I guess if you don't agree, then, so be it. I mean, you could take up foraging. Maybe you could get into like foraging whenever like World War III happens and the nuclear fallout launches and we have to learn how to like regrow society, I think you're going to want to have some charisma. You're going to be able to want to persuade some people. How are you going to do that? If you don't play Dungeons and Dragons and practice your persuasion skills. Level up your charisma, buddy. If you're on YouTube asking looking at like how to have more riz with women and you're not playing Dungeons and Dragons, I don't think you're really trying. In fact, I saw recently a list of the 15 most unattractive like hobbies a man can have. And the last one, number 15, was Dungeons and Dragons. So of all the least attractive things you can do to women, this is to the boys, sorry ladies, is play Dungeons and Dragons. So I think that's got to be like the best thing to do in some ways, because it's like the tallest midget award, smartest dumb person, dumbest smart person. But yeah, get into foraging. I think you should get into raising lizards. You should get into lizard keeping. We covered that in the first episode. But I think ultimately, it should be a lizard keeping forager who plays Dungeons and Dragons. And that's really all I wanted to say is stop watching the news, find a group of friends to get into a fantasy world with, and just lose yourself. Just get lost in the world. Life's hard, sure. You know what's really hard? Battling a lich, a necromancing wizard, dark warlock, battling a dragon. No, that's really hard. You think your life's hard? Call me whenever you take on a shape-shifting, wraith. You think your friend group has got some drama right now? Okay. Well, what about when your war party doesn't know when to go down this hallway or that hallway to chase maybe there's some gold down one hallway and down the other hallway is the bad guy. It's a gargoyle army, and that's a real dispute, and maybe it'd bring your friends closer. Maybe one of your friends had sex with another one of your friends and it's ruined the dynamic of the group. Bring it to the Dungeons and Dragons layer. Bring it to the D&D world. And I bet a lot of those problems will get ironed out through problem solving and dragon slaying. Man, this is I noticed I said this was a comedy podcast, but really this is just a lifestyle podcast where I'm giving you rock solid, take it to the bank, borrow money on this idea. These are the ideas I'm giving you is gold. I'm giving you lightning in a bottle, which sounds like a spell in D&D. I'm not sure if it is. I haven't gotten that far. But yeah, I'm going to cast a shield of faith on all the listeners right now, which is a bonus action. Actually, no, it's one of my spells, one of my cleric level 1 spells, and it basically helps you not get hit by goblins or bandits. So I'm casting a shield of faith of everyone that's listening right now. So if you're listening right now, man, you are lucky that you have a bird cleric helping you out. I know what you're thinking, Will, why aren't you a lizard person? It's a great question because obviously Free Lizard Society, life's funny like that. Life's weird. Life's full of surprises. And the bird guy really sung to me. He really called out to me. He really, which is what I do every time I talk, because I don't want to use a bird accent because that would be exhausting. Like, if I talk like that the whole time. So I just add a whistle and a click to everything I do. Kind of a little soft role playing for my first real D&D campaign. It's a great game to play with your family. Get around the Thanksgiving dinner table after you're all stuffed and go into a fantasy adventure with your family. No, you probably won't get very far because you'll be arguing and working out the details of the rules. But you know what you won't be doing? Arguing about politics, worrying about your gay cousin, worrying about your cousin that's got like a drinking problem or something, worried about your grandpa who did something wrong and now you're all trying to forget about it. You don't have to worry about any of that because you're worried about real problems. Because all problems are fake unless you can't eat, breathe, or sleep, or reproduce. Those are the real problems. But if you're just worried about, drama or work or, world news, those aren't problems. Get you some real problems. Start a D&D campaign. And when you're hearing this, I'll be climbing a mountain in Colorado trying to find myself and so I can get better at D&D. So I love you. And thanks for listening, and I hope your dice rolls are natural 20s and you have the odds in your favor. Yeah. Dungeons & Dragons. What a game. Goodbye, everyone.